Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to the first breakout of ESIP 2024. We're really glad you're here. I hope this is a fun session for you because you're going to warm up into ESIP, start practicing communicating about what you do to those in the room before you continue doing that for the rest of the week. So it's going to be informal, but yes, we will ask you to talk to other people in this session just to get yourself prepared, but don't worry, we're all in the same boat. Okay, so welcome. The title here is Communicating the Why of Your Project, Tips for Productive Work Conversations, because I think maybe some of us have experienced less productive conversations sometimes when we don't understand what's going on, or maybe we feel like we're not getting through to someone else. Everyone here is very welcome. Just to note, there are some invited required guests here who are USGS Community for Data Integration Project PIs. So welcome to those people who will be practicing talking about their projects as well. And welcome to the online people for being here. We will include you in all of the conversations. Oh, thank you, because that's not what's showing on the screen. Thank you, Daniel. So we are going to introduce ourselves and why we are doing this session and why we think communication is important from our perspectives. So I will start. My name is Leslie Shee. I'm with the U.S. Geological Survey in Denver, Colorado, and communication, I've realized, is just really critical just for understanding what's going on around you. And in my role as coordinator for the Community for Data Integration, I'm really trying to get more collaboration, more users for projects in the USGS, and support sustainability funds for projects after they've been started. Communication to non-specialists is a key part of that. And just to let you know, I feel like when I was younger, I was like a very quiet person. I was never going to be the person interrupting to get clarification or raising my hand in a seminar, like those people who raise their hands and ask questions. I'm like, how can they do that? But now I just don't care. I'm like, I don't understand that, and could you please clarify? I guess I've just seen a lot of people are sitting there not understanding what's happening, and it's best to just, ask for clarification. Everyone's going to appreciate that you did. So that is where I'm at. That's why I'm here. And my co-convener, Daniel, please.
Yes, my name is Daniel Segesman. Thank you all for coming here today. I am wearing an ESIP staff hat this week. I am filling in for one of our wonderful staff members who is with
us. She may be online.
She may be online, actually. She's been checking in, though, so she may bounce in and out. But I'm actually at George Mason University, and I'm a postdoc there, and I work with databases of rocks and fossils. But I do a lot of communication where I teach undergrad non-major courses where it's important to communicate in a very understandable way, and then also communicating to other scientists at conferences. And so I've been very much working on the scales at which you need to change the language used to make or communicate science.
Productive conversations.
Yes, to have productive conversations with people of different expertise.
Next slide.
Yes, okay.
So we thought a fun thing to start with, yes, you may need to, if you have a device, if you have a computer or you have a phone, you can join us on a Google Jamboard, which, yes, I did get it to work on a phone. It's not as, you have to click on a sticky and then it lets you edit it. If you don't have a device, that's fine. We will take verbal answers, which we can type into the Jamboard. But What are some of the areas of expertise we have in this room when we're trying to talk to someone? Like, have you ever thought the person that you're talking to didn't take any of the same courses that you took in school? Like, how do you connect? So I would like to attempt to go to this Jamboard on the laptop. We'll see if that works. Okay, is this showing for both online people and in the room? And it looks like we have some successful, I don't know if anyone on the phone has been successful. You can also make a new sticky if you need to. Daniel, what do you see up here?
And we're seeing paleontology, genetics, marketing and communications, nearshore biology ecology, sediment transport, granular flow, groundwater, surface water, freshwater hydrology, geophysics, geodesy and geophysics. So we're seeing remote sensing. We have a very wide breadth. Metadata.
Metadata.
Ooh, yes. Love metadata. GIS, yes. And so we're getting quite a range. Biodiversity, air quality, biodiversity data, bioinformatics.
The bit.ly is ESIP-Y. bit.ly / ESIP-Y, one word. And thank you. Is anyone having trouble getting the thing to work?
We have a couple of paleontology.
So
I have new stickies.
Okay. New stickies, hopefully on the mobile, there might be a panel here.
Yeah. Is it that little?
It's this little post-it like. We thought about getting real post-its, but this is fun.
Ooh, invasives management, behavioral ecology, permafrost education, research management, physical collections, geospatial data, data discovery, digital curation. Yeah, so we have people with a wide range of expertise.
Air quality and
social science,
just
telecommunications.
Hopefully the online people can also all participate in this together. But look,
science policy.
I'm getting intimidated to have to talk to people with these kinds of expertise.
Participatory science, air-sea interactions. Wow, such a range.
Okay, thank you. And this, I think, this is only a small sampling of the ESIP meeting that's here at the meeting. Okay.
Oh yes.
What's next?
I'm gonna go back to the slideshow.
Yes, please.
Yes. Next slide.
Next slide. Okay, so today we have a interesting agenda. We're first going to do what my past convener Annie Burgess called aversion therapy, where first we show you what doesn't work for communicating about our projects and talk about that a little bit more and have you practice what doesn't work with your friends here in the room. And sometimes that helps teach something better than what does work. For example, if I said, hey, I want to introduce myself. I'm Leslie Shee. I work for SDM and SAS and CSS at the Denver DFC. Okay, some people would know all of those acronyms right away, but this is not the place to introduce myself like that.
Yes.
So, Daniel, do you want to maybe show a demonstration of our first breakout? If you could go to the next slide.
Yes.
Okay, while I explain this, you can prepare, but this is going to be a demo of the first breakout of what doesn't work. So Daniel and I are going to demo, there will be a speaker that is leading the conversation about their project. So hopefully you can think of a project that you're working on that you'd like to tell someone about here at ESIP. And for this exercise, focus on some of the tactics that don't work, so you'll see that in just a moment. And there's the respondent, and this is the active listener. Please respond as you naturally would. So it's not just a listener, but you're a respondent. You have a role in this conversation. And then we will be breaking up into groups of 3 or 4. So there'll be 1 or 2 observers. And you kind of like, you observe and record how the conversation made you feel and maybe some tips and things that you observed. Okay, so right now in this demo, you, the audience, are all the observer. And, just imagine, I haven't seen Daniel since the last ESIP meeting, and I see him in the hallway, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot what you studied, right? Daniel, can you remind me, how's it going? Can you remind me what you work on? I forgot.
Oh yeah, good to see you, Leslie. I'm so excited you asked. I love to talk about my research. And so, sorry, I've got to read off this because I usually do not talk this way. All right. So I use the interoperable component of stratigraphic unit concepts to mesh PBDB paleobiologic data and macrostrat chronostratigraphic data and develop quantitative estimates through geologic time. This allows me to analyze continental scale first and second order geologic process influences on Ediacaran and Cambrian macroevolutionary patterns by statistically testing whether preservation bias or a common cause is the dominant influence on preserved rock quality. This approach seeks to provide new perspectives on Earth system processes that contributed to the appearance of metazoans in the Ediacaran and Cambrian periods. Pretty exciting, right?
Yeah, let's go get some snacks. Okay. So it was a lot of words coming at me, and you didn't ask if I knew about anything that you were talking about, or
Doesn't everyone know about the Ediacaran?
Okay, there's the Ediacaran. There's just like a lot of big words and a lot of fast talking. And I do the same thing when I'm nervous, right? You're like, let me just get something out there, and I will seem smart if, the other person cannot respond back. So do we have any reactions to how that conversation made you feel or what you observed?
Conversation.
Yes. Even as someone who has some familiarity with those topics, it felt like just like having a brick thrown at me. Like, that's a lot really quick.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Yes.
I thought was after about the first
Brain shut down.
And sometimes if that happens, let's just keep going. Yes, I've experienced that. We'll just encourage anyone online, if you want to type in chat, we do have people watching it that can read out in case there's any online. Okay.
Another reaction. While you were talking, I was having to split and keep listening, but also, oh yeah, but I remember so
multitasking. Okay. Was the just checking the volume on that one, because we can repeat if we did comments.
Please repeat.
Yeah, so the comment was mentioning that she was having to split her brain in order to keep track of the terms that were being said. It's like, oh, I remember that, but didn't have enough time to place that in the thing. So there is like a retroactive processing and at the same time trying to listen and pay attention to the new words that are coming.
Okay, so some other things that happen, or sometimes if you assume knowledge, sometimes people say as you know, as we all know, that can be something that kind of makes the other person less receptive, or already start thinking, oh, I don't know that, it's gonna make things anxious. So do you feel like you saw a bunch of what does not work examples? Okay, so now, yes, sorry, you may need to stand up, but if you could please find a group of, let's see, wait a minute. I need to advance to the next slide.
Okay. Got it.
Good thing there's two of us.
Yes.
Okay, we just talked about what happened and we can move forward to the next slide. Okay, so this is just a kind of repeat of what just happened. You're going to break into groups of 3 to 4 people and make sure you have the 3 roles, the speaker, the respondent, and observers. And imagine that you're at the ESIP Research Showcase tomorrow night, so whether you have a poster and someone's asking you about it, or if you just meet someone and you want to describe what you do, so the listener can ask, hey, what are you working on these days? And speaker, really just lean into it and start using some of the doesn't work methods. Respondent, listen and respond naturally. And then observer, if you can, prepare to like offer feedback or talk about what just happened. And if you do have the Jamboard up, it would be nice to just like type some of those reactions or tips or what didn't go right into the Jamboard. And I think there should be time in 10 minutes for 3-ish people or more to practice their what doesn't work method. Okay? We're on time as of now. Okay, so at around 27-ish plus maybe a little bit more after, we'll call you back, but we may rotate around to listen. And in online, hopefully we have a good number to have one conversation. Okay, awesome. So any questions about this? Okay, go for it.
Oh, can we make the participants able to unmute themselves so they can talk? So, so you all.
Like,
All right, now you have it.
Sorry. Yes. Emily and I are here in person. Yeah. How did that?
Well, that's a good place to start.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Freedom. Yeah. No, it's just
Well,
yeah.
Awesome. No, I think that's great. I added a note to the job. Said, didn't know acronyms at first. So that was
This job keeps going, it's about halfway, so make sure you rotate. And I see a lot of people, like, it's hard for them to do what doesn't work, but just keep trying to do what doesn't work.
yeah. Have you ever? Then it when it's celebrated.
All right, are we ready to reconvene? Do you know how to get people out?
Thanks everyone. Great job.
Oh, the conversations are too good. There's a lot of like. So you just click back up here on the shared slide. This is how you get to the Jamboard, and there's a second slide. I don't know how well it works on mobile platform, but you should be able to maybe swipe over to the next frame. And then this is where we'll take a look at it of what some of the observers saw. And maybe I see some people trying to get the QR code.
Yeah, I'll give everyone just a few minutes or a few seconds to get to the Jamboard, and then we'll show what's going on. All right, looks like everyone in here is good. Jamboard, nice.
Anyone on my mobile, figure it out? Okay.
Yeah. All right, let's show Jamboard.
Yes, so supposedly there's something at the top of the mobile Jamboard that allows you to move to the next frame.
Yeah, so it'll be the second slide, but yeah, on mobile, I've never used that before. So.
Okay, Daniel, would you like to share some of the things that we're seeing?
Yeah, it seems like a common theme is there's too many acronyms too fast. You know, we're here at ESIP, right, an acronym, and we have a lot of organizations that use a lot of acronyms. So, as we might call it, the alphabet soup flies around a lot here. So that is definitely a common theme. There's a rambling makes you lose the conversation, just kind of maybe not having a central theme. Right, and this is thinking through like start to end where you want to start, so on and so forth. Alphabet soup's up there. Look at that. One super important word that was important to understand to have a full understanding of the project, and maybe it wasn't clear to me to explain. Describing the structure of the project and not the gist of the work, the actual work being done. Right, so talking more about how rather than necessarily. Bored or dismissive demeanor, just kind of maybe speaking in a monotone, modulating, just kind of like this way. Speaking fast, right? Jamming everything together, not really getting very kind of all what you're saying, right? Big words, more syllables. Need to explain things that the speaker is taking for granted that other people understand, right? Similarly with the acronyms. Getting into the weeds instead of explaining the big picture, so getting into like the minute details of the project rather than focusing on what's the big picture, what's the idea, main idea focused on. Right? Yeah. Sounds like that.
Yeah, I can do some of the things on this side.
Yeah, go for it.
I like explaining things that you take for granted. We are such as in the USGS, maybe everyone knows a certain acronym, but when you come here, it's like, that acronym means something different. The speaker this morning was writing DOC yesterday on her name tag. She's like, okay, DOC. And I thought she was ask me about DOC. And I was like, oh, is that dissolved organic carbon? Department of Commerce. So it was different. Okay, yeah, assuming common knowledge. So this is a great list. And I saw some of you doing a good job explaining, which is okay. It's practice for breakout too. But it is good to just, think about all of the things that could contribute to make the other person not understand you, and maybe make you not secure funding. Okay, there's like a lot riding on getting people to understand what you're doing and why it's important. Something else? Slide. So we talked about what could have been done better and maybe some tips. So we're going to share a few tips, just summarizing. I think maybe we've talked about some of these, but we're going to talk about some tips for both the speaker and the respondent. Just remember, it's a two-way conversation, and then see if you have more to share. So, Daniel, why don't you give us the speaker's perspective, what you can keep in mind?
Yes, so focusing, as we mentioned, focusing on the why, right, and not the how. So the how is what methodologies are being used to complete a project that you're talking about. We're talking about the mathematics or the equations or, the samples, other things like that. Whereas if you haven't communicated why you want to do the project in the first place, what are the overarching questions or problems you're looking to solve and or address, that can make a big difference in being productive in your conversation. And turning it into a story is very useful. Humans are definitely wired to pay attention to and remember stories. So making it a story, even if it's not necessarily how you would normally talk, you're not writing that in a publication, for instance, right? A story per se, they want you to write out pretty plain words, but turning your message into an anecdote or relating it to something in your personal life or something about your observer's personal life can be very, very useful. And be prepared to take into consideration the response, not give them a chance to respond, right? Ask you questions and their needs and views. So don't assume prior knowledge, and try and avoid jargon as much as possible, especially acronyms, right? Not assuming that they know acronyms or other terminology, or as we saw, DOC can mean different things to different persons.
Great, okay. So for the respondent, don't be afraid to ask clarifying questions early. Okay, they start they're getting on a roll, and there's a lot of people that it is difficult to interrupt them in a polite way. But they will appreciate it if you care enough to ask them what they meant so that they're not just saying something you don't understand. So don't be afraid to ask those questions, and you might need to interrupt them, which is really hard, but like I said, it's good for the conversation. See if you can say it back if you're not sure, like summarize your understanding. So it can help when you're saying, oh, so are you saying that this is what happens and then you're doing it because of this? It helps you clarify and demonstrate that you're actively listening. And then if you have connections to your own work, it's great to bring those up because it just adds those connections where you might just, start another thread of what is interesting to you both that they may not have known about. Especially the interrupting part is very uncomfortable sometimes, but try it out this week if a conversation is going. I have to admit I used that tactic last night when I said, I don't understand what you're saying. It is too late. I can't process this. And then you can just move to another topic that's more appropriate for your brain. Okay, so what is the next slide? Okay. Why don't we show a better productive conversation trying again, because the only thing I remember about that last conversation is that you used the word ediacarin. I remember nothing else. So again, you're going to do this again. You're going to get in your same groups and have the speaker, but focus on some of the tips we just provided. We will have a summary of those 6 tips for you when you're doing the breakout. And also, right after this demo, you're going to have a 5-minute reflection time to make some notes about your pitch. Okay, but first you'll see a reimagined conversation. Please be the observer for this second demo. Okay, so we'll try again. It's been a year since I've seen Daniel. Hey, Daniel, I haven't seen you in a year. What's going on with your work?
Yeah, great to see you, Leslie. Recently, I've been very interested in the origins of animals.
Animals? What kind of animals?
So we're talking, well, technically metazoans, but any animal that is, big enough and complex enough to be considered that, but these earliest ones are pretty mysterious.
Metazoan? It's been a while since I've learned that. What does that mean?
So a bag in a bag, right? Essentially, so you have different layers. So you have organs, and then they have a body that contains those organs. And that's essentially what we define as metazoan, but it can be debated, we'll say.
So what are you studying about metazoans?
So I'm really interested in where they came from and why they only show up in the fossil record like I think 575 million years ago. That's the first time we get animal fossils in the rock record.
You getting to do any field work?
No, it's mostly through data. So I'm using data that's in some data platforms for my research.
I like data.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mostly-
Which platforms?
So I'm using the paleobiology database. So it's a global platform of fossils. And then I usually pair that with a data platform called MacroStrad, which has a bunch of rock and their stacks vertically and their positions and where they are and what the rocks are made of. And all that
That's really cool. I might ask you to come give a presentation on that type of stuff to one of the webinars that I'm organizing because it sounds like it would be really neat to learn more about that.
Excellent. I'd love to talk.
Okay. All right. So that's just a bit more of a two-way conversation, okay? So why don't we see what's the next slide? Okay, then so this is your silent reflection. So we're going to give you 5 minutes to think about from the speaker side, why, not how, maybe some stories and how to avoid the most jargony words, how to avoid them or explain them. And at the end of that, you'll get to do a revised pitch with your group. Are there any questions? Okay, we'll start the timer. And hopefully you all have there's a lot of paper and pens, thankfully, here for you. Online, do whatever you want. Type away.
Okay, there's no sound in here. Hello.
Play that one all the way to the end. Okay.
Hopefully, I don't make anyone jump out of their seats online.
Sorry, apologies for that.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, so now you have a few notes, and sometimes it's really hard to come up with a story, but hopefully some of you got that. You can try out a new story or a new way to explain what you're doing. So please break into the same groups first and start with the same roles you started with, if you remember. And please do the same thing where you imagine you're at the piece of research showcase and you're being asked by a complete stranger, like, what do you work on? And this time, try one or more of the productive methods and, listener respond and try some of your methods of asking when you don't understand something and mentioning connections. And observers, please continue. If you could get to the third frame of the Jamboard and just mark down some observations or provide feedback. I think we should have time that everyone can practice again. And if we look, we might even have time to switch up the people so we promised you would meet more people. And that really is one of the big goals of this session, to practice. Okay? So are there any questions? Daniel, do you have anything to add?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. Try and lean into your natural inclination of, explaining what you're researching.
Productively.
Yes, productively.
Yes. Any questions? Okay, go for it. We'll do time check-ins, but it will be about the same amount of time with your original group to start with.
You want to start at least?
Sure.
So I was going to go mute this again.
All right, let's bring it back to the discussion. Start. We need to make sense of what has happened.
Does anyone need the Jamboard link again? We're gonna come back together.
I thought you were gonna be like this anyway.
No. Yes, yes, having good conversations. Yeah. I'm just giving them a chance to. Yeah. I want to give everyone a chance to get back to the Jamboard because we have another slide where we're going to talk about what worked this time, what things did we like to see. So, in contrast to what we didn't like in the last one.
See, it's harder to get them to stop talking this time.
Yeah, the conversations must have been very productive. Okay.
Okay, maybe we will let the audience just project, okay, if you speak from the audience, but online, hopefully you can also see things that are on the Jamboard. We would like to let people weigh in, like what did they see that was different? What worked? So even if you wrote something up here, could we hear from you maybe?
Yes. So oftentimes when I'm really thinking about communicating productively, use Leslie's word, it feels sometimes like I'm talking down to people and like making it so dumb, right? Because I'm in it every day. But when we talked about it, and I like went through it and was like, oh yeah, and like really interested. So clearly it's not too dumbed down for like, and I don't want to, I guess that's a terrible way to phrase it because nobody here is dumb, right? But that I have to simplify things way more than I actually feel I should to. And
We call that making it more accessible.
Hi, that is such a really good point because we don't ever want to talk down to somebody, and we are definitely in a room where everybody has some science technical background. I spend a lot of time talking with people who may not have that. One of the best things that I've always done is do that check-in. Is as I'm starting to explain something, I check in. I'm like, do you understand this? Have you heard of this before? And depending on the response that I get from them, I can change my answer a little bit or change how I say it. So you never feel like you're talking down to somebody, that you're reaching them where they're at. It's like you don't assume that they're stupid, obviously. You assume that they're smart people, that they may not even know the right questions to ask. So that check-in is really good. Thank you for letting me hijack and respond to that.
We want to hear you back in the back row.
So a response to that, and then also a comment on a conversation that we had. So we talked about the same thing, kind of starting low, and not necessarily the cue check-in of, do you understand, but just when it's a two-way conversation, you get cues from the other person, and you can start to kind of up level the language that you're using or the technicality because you're getting that feedback. And so if you're not having a two-way conversation, you don't get that feedback. And then the comment that I wanted to make was that having this two-way conversation, sometimes when you go into, we talk about elevator pitches, and you're kind of programmed to know how to like splot out all of your information in X number of minutes. And so sometimes we go into these conversations with an agenda of, I need to get through these talking points, and that doesn't give room for feedback. And so when you slow it down and you have a two-way conversation, it takes longer, and you might not get through all of the top points, but there's comprehension on the other part, so it might be a more productive conversation than if you just go in with the, I need to make sure that I hit A, B, and C.
Actually, I wanted to make just a note on that because that's something that Leslie and I were talking about. When I was doing the second round with Leslie, there was still a natural instinct to want to steer the conversation to what I was excited about, which may not be what the person you're talking to is excited about or will connect with, right? Some people will hear the origins manuals, right? The other people will be like, oh, that's super exciting, right? So giving that space for the person you're talking to, help steer the conversation towards territory they're interested in.
I really liked hearing, I felt like I heard more about what people liked about their job instead of just listing their job duties. They might not say everything they do, but they choose the few that are more important to them and talk about why that matters to them and how they work towards that. And I found that much more engaging when they're excited about what they're talking about.
Well, let's take a look at the board. I mean, we just heard about like being relatable. I saw that somewhere here where, thanks, I'd like to yell. Something is more relatable. That's another key. You want to connect with your respondent. Okay, so I'll just read some on this side that started with who, what, why, how. If you can say that, that really helps. Including examples, general or specific, talking about a specific place or region. So some people are very like, they need to have something concrete in the mind to like picture, and like maybe talking about a region or a place can help that. And admitting when you don't know something, that can be hard to do, but very freeing to admit that you don't know something. Okay, do you see anything over there you'd like to point out?
I mean, we see a lot of, again, overarching themes where a listener's question showed interest to help create an engaging explanation. So again, allowing your person you're talking to be a part of the conversation rather than, as we heard, being delivered an elevator pitch, right? But then again, it is important, as we talked about, to know your audience, right? Maybe you're giving an interview and you're expected to give an elevator pitch that is 2 to 3 sentences. But in a lot of cases here at ESIP, we're meeting people face to face and having informal conversations, and we want to make sure we give everyone. But it is important to know your audience, what you're expecting. Maybe you are delivering it to an expert, panel. They don't want to hear about the basics because they want to get. Right.
Wait, do you want to explain that thing where sometimes if you know your audience, like what is something that might be off-putting to that audience, or like you say the wrong thing and shows that you're not one of them? Has that ever happened? Or think of a case where that could happen?
Oh yeah, definitely. If you want to talk at Geologic Society of America, first time as a grad student, maybe using the wrong term, or you can have terms that are, we'll say, trigger words for some people. I know my wife Brittany, she gave a talk and she said symbiotic bleaching in forams that are like 50 million years old, and that sparked a whole mess. That's the word today, particular talk. So yeah,
that's very interesting because I would never know that was a trigger word for searching. Okay, great. Any other things people wanted? I did have a question. Like, did anyone come up with a story during their? I like to yell. Did anyone come up with a story during their reflection time? Because that's what's hard for me sometimes. Is like, okay, this story is corny or whatever. Like, I'm just making up the story. I'm wondering if anyone was able to come up with a story or has some ideas about how to make a story.
So not me necessarily, but one of the people in my group started out talking about how he got involved, why he does what he does. Like essentially, it was his origin story, and that was brilliant. It really got me engaged. Like, oh wow, you've been excited about this for so long, and this is why you were excited about it, and now this is why you're doing what you do. So I just don't recall
Nice example.
Not nearly as I guess engaging as like a full story, but like a little case study if possible from the data. I feel like it's a good way to be able to like exemplify one of the use cases of whatever you're doing with your project, but still be able to expand it out to a broader audience.
Thank you.
So I was able to weave in a quick story as a listener, as Leslie was talking about work on seismic data and students in California. I was able to mention we had an earthquake in Washington D.C. And sort of talk a little bit about the experience there. So I know that was fun.
All right, well, so there's some tips. I'm gonna be thinking about like, oh, I can help think of my origin story and work that into conversations. All right, well, we're going to move on. Keep going. Okay, so now we're just talking, so thank you, that completes our what doesn't work, aversion therapy, and practicing some methods that do work. And remember, it's a process. Just every time you have a conversation, try to think a little bit more of how you can have a productive conversation. But there's many other ways that we communicate, and we have a famous guest blogger with us here today. Daniel had written a guest blog on the ESIP blog. Would you like to talk about it? Because I thought it was like really relatable.
Sure, yeah, I'm really famous with all of my one blogs. But yes, I wanted to talk about there was a survey that got published from the United Kingdom in 2023, I believe, that was asking, what do people think of geologists? Like, what do people think that geologists do? And they said, you just look at rocks and have beards, right? That was there were many other responses, but that was an overarching theme in the response. And so I wanted to write a guest blog that was essentially not in response to that, but took that to heart, right? And then, rolled with it in terms of beyond the rocks and beards and talking about, you know, what is geology? What do geologists do? And how might that impact you in your day-to-day life? It's not just, a geologist walks by the road, sees a rock, and can tell you all the history about it, right? There are some very important things that they do. But you can read the blog if you're interested in that. What we're more interested in here is that, we were talking about verbal communication and engaging in conversation back and forth. But as Leslie said, we have many different methods of communication, which also includes written. Right? With written, we can take a lot of time to think about what we're saying and how it, impacts people and how it might relate to others. But just as an example, I can just highlight that one of the, that's the wrong one. There we are. All right, so hopefully everyone can see that. But so on and so forth, introduction of the blog. But really, the section that I really spent a lot of time thinking about is right here, where it's geology and you. So connecting some things, not all of it, it's not comprehensive, that geologists do to people in their everyday lives. For instance, do you drink water? Who here drinks water? Right? I sure hope so, right? Well, pretty much all the water you have consumed has probably been analyzed at some point by a hydrogeologist who's making sure that aquifers are safe to drink from, but also the levels of aquifers that there's drinking water available, particularly if you're in certain parts of the world that are much drier, right? Hydrogeology is incredibly important for managing that critical resource for ourselves, right? And there's all sorts of other examples. Again, if you're interested, you can check out this blog, but just an example of how we can use written communication, right, to get across. The survey identified, that people were not necessarily really understanding what geologists do, or that the fact that geologists do something that impacts them. And there are many people in this room who do things that are probably in a similar category where, we do very important things or things that impact people in their day-to-day lives, but they may not understand that. But it's also, of course, impossible to understand everything that impacts our day-to-day lives, which is why we have experts. But anyway, another method of communication.
And I love this last. I could go on, but like here's what you wrote in your blog. I could go on and on. Okay, so thank you for sharing that. That brings us to the final slide. Okay,
Yes.
so thank you for participating. I know it's hard to be forced to talk to other people in breakouts, and usually I like see those and I'm like, oh, let me go to a different breakout, but thank you for being here. Please do some more real life practice while you're here at ESIP. If you're at the research showcase, make it a goal. Talk to 3+ new people about your project and then learn from them as well. Keep communicating and keep communicating.
Yeah.
Daniel?
I was going to say, when you go to the research showcase, you're going to have a lot of people talking about their projects. So you can practice being a good observer and listener. But you can, just in the back of your mind, have that, running record of, all right, who's doing a really good job of communicating and what did they do that I really liked? And who is, maybe I was really struggling to understand what they were talking about and what could they have done differently to improve that. And then these are all lessons we can learn for ourselves.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your participation. Thank you, online folks, for talking with each other. And talk to us this week.
Yes, we would love to hear about your research. So if you need one of your 3 people to talk to, and it's like, you don't want to bait someone into talking about your project, but if you come up to myself, and I don't want to talk for Leslie, but if you come up to us, we'll be happy to listen to you practice your new skills or refreshing yours. And I want to give a big thank you to our helpers here today, Grace and Emily, and our community fellow, Sharif, right, for their assistance in helping make this session run.
Thank you so much. Okay. You may go for it.
You are free. All right. Cool.